What's that you say? I messed up a good thing. What's that you say? I messed up a good thing. Look here, ain't no need to begging, honey, because it ain't no use. Try. Now you got to cut loose. Yeah. Well, if you do, I have nothing left. I'm gonna buy me a gun and shoot myself because you cut me.
Folks, welcome inside the Parisi Palace, high above 3773 East Broadway. This is a live edition of the Jake Feinberg Show. Comedy on Power Talk. Please go to our website, powertalk.live. Download our free app and stream all of our live local programming, including Solomon on Blast, the Jim Parisi Show, and yours truly, the Jake Feinberg Show. Can't thank you enough for making us part of your day today. And without further ado, I want to bring in a cat who really learned from the original masters of the music. We go back to the original masters being Ray Charles and Sam Cooke, the original masters being Charlie Parker. And cats like Bill Monroe and Bluegrass, or Little Richard, Elvis Presley, and rock and roll. But my man today is part of a lineage of a family that stretches back to the most indigenous music of our time, the music of diaspora, and ultimately what turned into R&B, soul, and it's all music. And without further ado, I want to bring in beautiful, beautiful cat, Charles Neville. Welcome to the Jake Feinberg Show.
Thank you very much, Jake.
Did you catch that tune coming in?
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about the Riverboat Soul Band?
Yeah, the Riverboat Soul Band. Originally, the band was called, when I first got in the band, it was called Tony Farrar and the Band of Gold.
Wow.
But we got a record deal, and the record company thought that Tony Derringer and the Riverboat Soul Band was a hipper name or something, more sellable, I don't know. But anyway, that's how we became the Riverboat Soul Band. It was really a great R&B funk rock band with tastes of blues and jazz as well.
Well, just to show you that I've been on this trip for 6 years, Charles. I know we're just getting started with our interview, but I want to play you this audio clip. I want to see if you can name this voice, and then we'll come back. I mean, obviously listen to the content as well, but then
okay,
come back and talk about it.
All right.
I had played earlier in the Riverboat Soul Band. The horn player was Charles Neville.
Really?
And
Jeez.
Charlie brought Aaron came up because he was on the run from something in New Orleans to New York, and Aaron was in the band with us, would play keyboards. He'd sit in and play keyboards with us for a couple of weeks at a time. And then Charles and I had a little band. When that band broke up, Charles and I put something together just to make some money. He brought the Pesant brothers in from New Orleans, so they were teaching me some New Orleans stuff. Like Charles Neville taught me how to really feel a shuffle, and so Mac is saying to me, and I was playing a little bit of that second line stuff that they showed me, and he said, "Yeah, that's good, but if you really want to play the feel of this New Orleans kind of music, got to think tango." And I'm like, what?
Tango?
He says, tango, yeah. And so he starts humming something like Hernando's Hideaway. And he's saying, like the basic idea was at this slow tempo, pat, pat, boom, pat, pat, boom, pat, pat. So I started playing that, basically. I started thinking and singing Hernando's Hideaway in my head and playing all variations of that stuff. And then Mac goes over and sits down at the piano and starts playing this insane, indigenous New Orleans kind of music. And it all just fell right into place. And I remember him looking over at me with his sort of big smile on his face and nodding. And then when we were done, he goes,
Yeah, that's what I was talking about.
But if you spend,
You know, I didn't. That's a great clip, but I want to. Do you know who that is?
And Rick Marotta.
Oh, you got it, my man, Rick. That was from December 2016, last year. Now, this is what I'm going to read you. What he said this late. I don't know when this comes up, but I didn't want to keep it going. He said, Charlie Neville pulled me aside and said, you know, your shuffle sounds great, but it would feel really good if you played it a little differently. I said, what do you mean? He said, well, I'll show you. And Charles played alto in the band we were in. He sat down on the drums and he played his hands and his feet at the same time, playing the shuffle, ta-ta, 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 ta-ta. It was so stripped down, so basic. And then he said, now take that shuffle, and whatever you do, you're always thinking of those notes when you play. You can play just quarter notes on the bass drum, you can play just backbeat on the snare drum, but the shuffle is always inside. That was in its simplest form. That was a shuffle. I know that other guys who heard me play a shuffle like that would look at me and say, what is he doing? Pretty soon, though, they'd be playing the same thing because it felt great, and they couldn't figure out how it felt so great. All right, my man? So I want...
Yeah.
Okay, so for the audience worldwide, I just want you to talk about how you learned the shuffle beat from your family or from wherever.
Well, it was part of the shuffle beat was part of most of the music in the 40s and 50s. That was a lot of the dance music played in in the juke joints had that shuffle, and a lot of the blues artists from the Delta that music was driven by that shuffle. And in New Orleans, there were some really great drummers, unschooled drummers, who played stuff that guys couldn't figure out. Wow, what is he doing? But it sounded really great. And one of those guys that I had the opportunity to play with was Charles "Hungry" Williams.
Oh boy! Wow.
And Hungry is on a lot of the recordings that came out of New Orleans. And again, we toured with, I think Larry Williams was one of the bands I toured with Hungry with. But yeah, he had that he wasn't someone who had been to music school of, a Red and all that stuff, but he could play. And he had his own style, and a lot of cats copied what he was doing, and a lot of cats tried to copy what he was doing and couldn't get it. And then the tambourine. In the Baptist church was another source of that feeling.
Let me just, because I've interviewed Jabo Starks and Clyde Stubblefield, rest in peace. They both came out of the Sanctified Church. I mean, it was the Baptist church in New Orleans at that time. There was no trap set, right? It was just the hand clapping from the older cats, their hand clapping and the tambourines, maybe some sticks. But I just want you to break that. This is absolutely, my show has become about rhythm, so it has to, just want you to break that down. Okay,
yeah. Well, it was really the tambourine was the main thing, and I did get to go to the Sanctified churches too, where Herlin Riley's grandfather played drums. That was the first time I saw a cat playing a drum set and using his hands.
Wait, hold on.
Sticks.
Herman Riley? Did you just drop Herman Riley?
No, Herlin.
Herlin Riley. So his dad was playing the drums with his hands.
His grandfather was Lasty.
Lasty, yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. Like the drummer in the band that I had was Poppy Lasty. This Mr. Lasty was his father, and they had another, really unique approach to the rhythms. But yeah, he played in that Sanctified church, and he, like I said, he played the set, but no sticks.
I love this stuff, man. I mean, Marotta, as you probably know, is like. His mom and dad would take him to the Apollo, and they probably, Lord knows, saw you play. Maybe, I mean, he was playing, seeing all this R&B and soul, so he learned all this dance music. and then eventually got on the trap set when he was 19. But when he told me that story, my jaw fell open, and I'm like, because I'm obsessed with this at 39, and everything's so interconnected now, and everything's so sort of formulaic now. Like, you made this point about academia, and I was talking to Khalif about this too, because I love the fact that he deferred going to Berkeley and just prefers to be on the bandstand, you know, and it was like, I'm like, these sounds came out of people's soul. This is their soul.
Right,
Man. You can't copy a soul. You can't copy somebody's heart. And I'm like, and then when he told, so could you, I mean, what were you exactly, what was different about the shuffle that he knew, and then what opened his mind to what you showed him?
Well, I don't know where he had learned the one that he knew. But let me tell you about a band that Rick was in with me. Joe Tex had a band, and in that band was some friends of mine from New Orleans, James Booker, Fred Kemp, and Leo, the bass player. And they all left Joe Tex's band in New York when I was living there. So we put together a band and had a gig on, I think it was 124th and 7th Avenue at some club. And so we needed a drummer, and I had played with Rick in the Riverboat Soul Band and some other things. So I called him, and he got to play with those cats, with James Booker, Fred Kemp. And the guitar player we got was Phineas Newburn's brother.
Wow. Whoa. That I need to hear tapes of that band, man. That's unbelievable.
Yeah, unfortunately we weren't recording. You know, so it was a jazz gig at first, you know, at this club on 124th and 7th Avenue. And after we had been there for a little while, we come in one day, there's a new owner. And he says, there's going to be a change. I want dance music.
Yeah, right.
So we just played the same tune we had been playing, but with the funky rhythm. And it worked out.
So it was like, was it like Minton's or Small's Paradise? Was it a jazz club, or was it?
No, it was this. I can't remember the name of it. It was just a small little place. Like this corner on 7th Avenue was where the pimps and the hustlers brought their cars to be washed.
Oh wow!
By the lesser hustlers, who they paid to wash their cars.
Yeah, I dig. I mean, this.
And so the clientele at that club, at first was them, the pimps and the upper class hustler and the girls, were the main clientele at the club. And so, they were the sophisticated hustlers of jazz. They were cool with the jazz. They like. I'm trying to remember. Yeah, I know. Rick did. We went to Minton's. Tiny Grimes was a good friend of mine, and so he took me to Minton's the first time. And I, when I hooked up with those guys, with the Riverboat Soul Band guys, I introduced them to Minton's and other places in Harlem as well.
This is so fascinating. I mean, I can you talk about to me it's interesting because I'm reading back to when you, let's see here, you were playing in New Orleans and backing. I mean, this is essentially Johnny Ace, Little Walter, James Brown, B.B. King, Bobby Bland, Ray Charles. But I'm curious about your interactions with the jazzers. When I interviewed John Hendricks, the singer, he said that, without the Sicilians, there'd be no jazz in America. So that basically a lot of the clubs were maybe not mob-owned, but they were run by the Italians. And then did you cross paths with cats like Louis Armstrong or Dizzy? I mean, those to me, jazz, the birthplace of jazz, some people will say it was Harlem. I would argue it was New Orleans. And
I would agree with that.
So I want to know about you, because I mean, when I listen to you play, I'm producing a film documentary on Stan Getz, and so when I hear your melodies, I hear your sequencing of melodies, I hear your sort of raw individual sound, and I'm like, this cat is, I mean, you were definitely playing stone jazz at some point. So who were the cats that you rubbed elbows with down there, aside from the locals like James Black and Ellis Marsalis and those cats? Who came? Did you hang with Louis or anyone like that?
No, I never got to hang with Louis, but when I was touring with the bands in the 50s, with cats like Little Walter and Jimmy Reed. All of the guys in those bands were bebop players.
Right.
If there were horn players, I remember Sonny Rollins was one of those bands that the band I was in was on the show. I think it might have been Screaming Jay Hawkins or one of those cats. But yeah, everybody in the bands, the horn players, and most of the musicians, period, were cats who were playing bebop. And the way the shows went back then, the blues shows, the band would go on first and play either if it was a 4-hour gig, we'd play the first half hour was the band playing jazz. Then they'd introduce the star, and he'd come out, and we'd play the blues. And then he'd leave, and to close the show with the band playing jazz.
Wow. Yeah, that's what Gadsden said when he was on the road with Hank Ballard and the Midnighters. This was like in the early 60s. Because, I mean, at that point, your ears were so wide open. I mean, were you playing, this was in the 50s, but when you got into that Riverboat Soul period, were you playing like modal jazz to open those shows? Were you playing like long Coltrane tunes?
No. Then with the Riverboat Soul Band, we had some jazz tunes that we played, but no, we were doing some more like what was that tune called Milestone? Dum, 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 dum. That was one of the jazz tunes we played. Yeah, and then we played the blues with the bebop blues changes as well. With swing and shuffle.
Wow. I mean, this is so. I mean, when you most of the cats, the jazzers, like you said, Sonny Rollins, Tootie Heath, most of them started in R&B bands and then moved into jazz. This is like really pretty amazing stuff. But I mean, like when you, I just kind of wanted you to talk about your concept of the idea of basically any note can be the one beat, where you, in a group setting, you maybe go off, you play the head of the tune, and then you go off into a stretch it out, long improvisational jam. And at that point, you might lose the one. But when you are all on the same page and you have trust on the bandstand, you come back in at the same time. And I want the Charles Neville approach to any note can be the one.
You mean the downbeat of the one or the tonal?
I mean,
center?
like the downbeat.
Yeah. Oh, okay. If the drummer took a solo, no telling where it went. So when it came back in, wherever he hit that bam, that bass drum and the cymbal, that was the one. Although we wouldn't be counting it through his solo, 1, 2, 3, 4, to know where it was. We'd be listening to what he was playing and feeling it, and then when he came in, we'd feel where it was. And the same with the horn players playing solos during that modal period and what they call the new thing period, where they're kind of out jazz, where yet both tonally and rhythmically it would go away from whatever the original center was, and eventually somehow it would come back. And it was mostly a thing of feeling, of getting back, changing a groove, going from one kind of feeling to another.
Can you talk about an experience on the bandstand early on? Because it's about feel, and I worry about my daughters and younger generations with all the machines and all the digitization of music, that if they can't, you might have the most chops in the world, but if you can't feel the music, for me, I sometimes watch cats and they have a lot of facility, but I wind up staring at the wall because there's no feel. And so I'm wondering about you, like, how did you learn how did you develop inner feel, like that burn where you're like, I mean, when you drop the bar lines on, like, and it's totally space, but yet you're secure enough to come back in on time.
That from playing with the bands in the early 50s in New Orleans and on the road, the music was, we were playing for whoever the people were in the place.
Right.
And the aim of the band was always to get some kind of reaction out of the people. And okay, I'm on with that shuffle. If they danced, you were getting them, and then you could watch how they were moving to the beat and knew what was, that you were doing something that was really getting to them rhythmically. If you're playing a solo and you see people moving a certain way, and again, with playing the solos, like we didn't, back then, I didn't think, okay, this is 2-5-1. I'm going to 4. I'm going to 5. I was just playing.
Yeah.
And there would be times when at first I'd start playing thinking, that, okay, I'll start playing, and I hear a phrase, I'm going to play this. But then it was like this thing would take over, and stuff was coming out that I didn't know how to play. And that was when I felt like, oh, this is what this is all about. We get, the music takes over. You get to be familiar enough with the instrument where, okay, you can play stuff that but then the music starts to come through you out of the horn, and it's stuff that you don't know. But the feeling, you really feel it, and then you can see, it's kind of like you feel connected with the people in the audience. That there's this energy that's going around, that's coming through you, it's going into the people in the audience, and then coming back up on the bandstand.
I love that. Can you go deeper on this thing, though? Is it leaving your physical body? I've talked to so many cats who are like, literally they've transcended their physical body on the bandstand. When you don't know what's coming out of your horn, but people are moving to it, and there's this spiritual connection. I mean, when did you see the Holy Rollers, like when you were younger in the Sanctified? When did that first hook you?
Oh, yes, I did. Well, no, that first, for me, it happened playing with those blues bands in the 50s. But many years later, I was in a Native American band called the Song Catchers, and the lead singer, this Navajo guy out in Nescahide, was saying, people think when we do this, when we do the music, that we are making the music, but we are not making it. We are catching it as it comes from the Great Spirit and passes through us. And I realized, whoa, that's what happens when that feeling would happen on the bandstand, where I'm playing, and then all of a sudden, it's like I'm not playing, the music's playing me.
I love play. The music's coming from the heavens. It's coming through you.
Exactly. And that was how I was able to play stuff that I didn't know how to play. But, like in the early, I didn't know, when I first started touring with those bands, I was out there with Gene Franklin and his House Rockers. We were playing, we had the house band spot in the blues tent on the Rabbit Foot Minstrel Show. And so we got to play behind these different bands, different artists. And, I hadn't studied any music theory at that time. I didn't know anything, about it academically. And I just played by ear and feel. And there were some times, some experiences where I felt like, whoa, man, that was so cool. I really did some great shit, but I don't know what it was.
And it wasn't like you had recordings to listen back to. It was just like in your spirit, right? I mean, that's just amazing, dude. That's why I love your generation, man. Your ears were so big. But see, the thing, I guess what I'm sort of trying to figure out is, like the R&B bands, correct me if I'm wrong, but I mean, it was when you played, like, not your opening set, but when they came on, the sets were somewhat formulaic. I mean, you knew the tunes. It wasn't like they were, like, stretching out, like, in a free form, right? I mean, you kind of knew when your solo was going to come in, how long, beginning, middle, and end. But, I mean, did you have here's the question. Did you ever play... What was the most free jazz band that you ever played in? Like in that, yeah.
But with some of those blues cats, it was like that because, there was a tune that they had recorded, but they were not trained musicians, and they had no music theory. So, the 12-bar blues was the first 4 bars on the one, and the next, the 5th bar, you go to the 4, but that might not happen like that playing with them. We had to follow where they went,
Oh, my God, this is unbelievable.
And then sometimes the singers who didn't play an instrument would change key during the song. And I remember it was so funny on the bandstand, the piano player, oh, there you go, catch him. And the bass player, oh, I got him. Well, he in E flat now. so, in a way, it was really free form, Because we didn't know exactly how it was going to go or what was going to happen. And I remember playing with Jimmy Reed, and him, a new piano player came in the band, and we were at a rehearsal, and we're playing this blues, and at the fifth bar, he didn't go to the four, and the piano player stopped. Excuse me, when you're supposed to, that's where the chant's supposed to happen. Jimmy Reed said, hey, man, this is my fucking blues. You chant where I chant.
Yeah, no, I mean, dude, it was like, I remember talking to some cat, beautiful cat, Tom Ledden, and he used to play in a band in L.A. when James Jamerson moved out there, the bass player from Motown, and he was like, someone was hemming and hawing about, I don't know where the one is. I don't know where the one is. And Jamerson's like, any note can be the one. Any note, like just feel it, feel. Like when you talk, like when you mentor younger cats, I mean, when you talk, what is the best way for cats in your mind in 2017? Because listen, there was nothing like what was so great about what you just riffed on there, being on the bandstand, and the singer might change keys, and you had to adapt on the fly, and there was really no time to think. But there was also not this deluge of information that we have now on YouTube. But there's so much to copy now. Murata said it too with the drum machine. People started to copy. People started to copy a machine. Okay, when you start to copy, that's why you can't tell the difference. I mean, I've done 2 interviews with Bill Cosby before the world caved in on him, and he said that basically you could put on any Blue Note record, and he could tell you if it was Mickey Roker, Pete LaRocca, Tony Williams. Everybody had their own sound. You know this, So it's like when you talk to cats today, knowing that they're up against everybody's got smartphones, everybody uses technology in certain ways. How do you talk to cats about how they should go about developing their own individual sound?
Well, first I tell them if it's cat playing a toneless, you got to learn the instrument. The main thing, like I tell my Sonny Stitt told me many years ago that, man, you got to know your horn. And I said, what do you mean by that, know my horn? I said, well, you got to learn all the scales. And I told him back then, man, I don't want to play no scales. I want to play bebop.
Right.
And he said, well, look, man, there's nothing on the instrument. The instrument is constructed based on the scale. So there's nothing that you play that doesn't come from a scale. So how do you be able to play in any key? You know all the scales. And then he told me that but it's not like, and I told him, well, man, I know the scales. He said, no. So when you learn the scales up and down, do, re, mi, but he said, well, that's like, that's not really knowing it, because a scale is like a cube. See, it's got 6 sides. That's one side of that cube when you learn the scale up and down. Then there's just 5 other sides. And then that cube is filled with a bunch of little smaller cubes. And, like all the intervals and the triads and the 7 chords and all that. Oh, holy shit.
There's just, it's so, no, because I mean, did you with your brothers when you were coming up, did you learn, I talked to like cats from Philadelphia that used to practice with Train, and this goes for everybody. Did you learn about like playing one song in every key? Where you learn to play it in every key?
Not in the early days, no. Then we were just doing stuff by ear. We didn't even know. I remember my uncle playing piano, and I asked him about what key he was in. He said, I wouldn't know a goddamn B flat if it jumped out the bushes and bit me.
But I mean, when you're talking about this cube, does that resonate with younger cats? Do they understand how sonic expansion occurs by being able to uncover and investigate this Rubik's cube of music?
Yeah, once you really explain it and get them started on doing it and show them different things that they can tap into because of it. Okay, if you can, like again, once they understand that, well, most of Western music is based on that, that particular scale system. And most of jazz for the bebop and before was based on the 2-5-1 chord progression.
Exactly.
and then the modal thing came in where there was just one or two chords, and it depended then on tonal and rhythmic magic, making something.
Absolutely, dude. I mean, it was magic, man. You guys were magicians. Unbelievable.
Yeah.
But I mean, really, going back to today's cat peeps. I mean, also, like, do they have the experience? There's no touring circuit anymore, really. I mean, you had the Chitlin circuit. You had these circuits that you could play relentlessly. I mean, part of it is that there aren't the venues and also the support of the patrons. I mean, music in our culture has changed a lot, and its meaning. And when you were up in Harlem, that was for black people, that the culture, music was everything for the culture. People would go and support it. And so I just
right. Well, not only there, like earlier than that, touring in the South, in New Orleans, there was the Dewdrop Inn,
right,
which was a social center, and it was where all of the cats played. That's where I first met and played with Big Joe Turner. Was at the Dewdrop. That's where I met Ray Charles and got to play with him first. Was at the Dewdrop. But in Memphis, there was Sunbeam Mitchell's Club Handy on Beale and Hernando, and it was the same kind of scene. In Mobile, Alabama, there was a joint called Big Rose. The guy's name was Roe, R-O-E, and it was Big Rose joint. It was the same kind of scene where that was a social gathering place where the music and the interaction between the people in the audience, the people who came for the music to dance and drink and have fun. And I remember in Tampa, Florida, there was Watt Sanderson's Blue Room. That's where last place I played with Johnny Ace was at Watt Sanderson's Blue Room. And in St. Pete, there was Jack's Fiesta Club. And then when I get to New York, there's Mittens. I played at Small's Paradise uptown. What was it? The Count Basie's on 125th Street. The Apollo, and then the smaller club downstairs under the Apollo, the After Hours joint. And yeah, so there were all those things. The same thing. It was a social set scene, and some of them, like in the South, it was mostly people were drinking. That was the main, stimulus in the entertainment, the drinking and the music. And then there were some of the places where there was the drugs. In New York, there was certain clubs where, there was, in the 60s, the weed was the most prevalent thing at wherever the venue was. But for a time in New York, there were places that we played where the clientele were the hustlers.
Right.
And their drug of choice at that time was cocaine.
In the 60s.
Yeah.
Really,
60s
I did not know that cocaine had really came in this. I just thought it was essentially maybe LSD and marijuana in the 60s, and then by the early 70s, that's when the cocaine really came in. But you're saying it was in the 60s.
Yeah. Well, see, the problem was that knowledge of what was happening in the black community was not spread outside of that.
I dig.
So yeah, so when it became known that cocaine was really a big deal, that was when it was more in white society.
I see. So it came to the surface only. Of course, it's just like the opioid addiction now. We fund
right.
We fund that because it's a white cats are getting addicted to it, so we have to fund that. Right. I dig.
Yeah.
I dig. This is unbelievable. I mean, you're blowing my mind. Who were the? This is so important for history. The Paisant brothers. Who were these cats?
One of them was one of them played bass and one played guitar.
Because what I'm trying to get at is, so the riverboats. Because I mean, the great. I wish we had the Murata was like Mac. I played with Mac's tutoring him on this shuffle beat, and he's like, I played with Charlie. He told this story about Charlie, and he's like, I played in the Riverboat Soul Band. And then he said, and then we put a band together to make some dough. What was that band?
Well, that was the band with I forgot, Eddie Williams was in that band too. Those cats who had been with Joe Tex,
right,
from New Orleans. But it was Booker, Kemp, and then there were two brothers. Shit.
Was there a name for the band though? That's what I'm curious about. Was there a name?
What the hell? We called it something. I don't remember.
Okay,
What
but then when did the Soul Machine? Because I'm trying to. When there was another band called the Soul Machine, right? I mean, when did that come?
Yeah. That came out of Sam Henry. Sam Henry had a band in New Orleans called Uncle Sam and the Americans. And then he changed it to Sam and the Soul Machine. And my brother Cyril was, and in fact, we all played with the Soul Machine. Myself, Cyril, Aaron were all in that band at one time or another. And there's a picture somewhere. Somebody posted on Facebook a picture from back then with Bobby Love was the guy's name, who was, I think he might have been the band leader back then of that band. And I can't remember the other, the names of the other guys in the band.
Did you ever go in and record with that band? Did you ever cut an LP with that band?
No, I never did. 'Cause for me back then, when the recording thing was happening, the cats who were recording, they were always complaining about not getting paid, and and getting their material ripped off. And for me, I was into the idea that the music exists for real at the time that you're playing it, when it's happening. And that, so at the recording session, it was really happening. But then what was on, when it was on the record, then the cats were no longer involved in making that connection with the people listening to the music.
Did the solo? Did you feel like also it wasn't authentic because maybe they'd cut the solo, they'd alter what was actually played during that in the moment session?
No, because with some of them, especially in the South, like it was like the cats played and they recorded what they played.
Right.
So it wasn't that. It was just that my feeling was I'd rather be out there rather than being in the studio playing. I'd rather be playing where there's some people, an audience hearing it then when it's happening, rather than for just the engineers and the studio people and the band there when it's happening. Although cats did make records like that where they were really able to make that thing happen, but for me, I wanted to have the people there too.
Well, I mean, you go back and, like Jimmy Smith, I mean, he would just cut live albums at Small's Paradise so that whatever was, that live setting. I wanted you to a lot of people were living through a sort of a very deceptive time on so many levels and a bit perilous. You have the arc of history a lot longer than I have, but a lot of people think that modern history started with the Greeks and the Romans, but in fact it started in the motherland of Africa. And I wanted you to talk about the first time that you were able to go back to the motherland and the effect that it had on you, and also the timeless music of Africa.
Well, really, it was in New Orleans with getting to know some of the people who were involved with the Mardi Gras Indians and understanding how we all had Native American heritage and and how it came from the Africans coming over here and then getting together with the Native Americans because both being kind of in the same boat with the Europeans, and so the some of the African cultural elements were kept alive along with some of the Native American elements, and
which elements were kept alive?
Spiritual and musical, and just spiritual and cultural. Period.
Someone was saying,
and the music was one of the greatest things.
something I just want to be clear. You were aware from your ancestor, from your family. One thing that's interesting for cats like me is like there were black people in the Americas before diaspora, right? It just got a lot more when the slave trade took over. But it wasn't like
Right.
it wasn't like slaves showed up and all of a sudden they were like, yeah, we're going to be pals with the Native Americans. They had already been collaborating for many years before, right? I mean, that's can you share a story of how far back that lineage goes? Because I mean, again, in the books, it's like, oh yeah, the slave trade occurred, and then all of a sudden slaves showed up in America. Well, there were plenty of black people here before that.
Right, but history doesn't.
Yeah.
Like the history that's taught in the school system doesn't touch on that.
This is why I do my show.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Like there was there's a book, man. Let me tell you about this book. A woman by the name of Lillian Smith wrote a book called Killers of the Dream.
Let me write this down. All right.
And you should definitely check that out. It's a look at, it was written by a white woman in the South in the 30s, and it was banned. I got my first copy of it from my great aunt, who was the help for a white family for a couple of generations, and they gave her the book. And to this day, you won't find it on the shelf in a bookstore anywhere, but you can order it. Amazon and a couple other people have it, and it's a look at sexism and racism in the South and the kind of creation of the myth of white supremacy. And it's really interesting, informative look, and so.
Could you talk about one profound thing specifically about this myth of white supremacy?
One thing was that for the people who were, immigrants from Europe, uneducated, who had nothing and didn't know anything and were given land to farm, and they were Christians. When they were told that, okay, we can give you some folks from Africa to work for you, in order for them to be able to accept the idea of enslaving another person, they had to feel that person wasn't really a person like them. That he wasn't quite an animal, but wasn't quite a human either.
Right, it was subhuman in some way. Subhuman.
Yeah. So it was all right to not treat them as a Christian because they had no souls. Right, that was one of the things they said.
Wow.
That the African savages and the Indian savages didn't have souls, because if they had souls, their skin would be white.
Unbelievable. I mean, this is truly like incredibly important stuff that will never ever see the light of day in regular history books. Did you let's see here. I wanted to ask you about this cat and okay, so tell me about Toussaint Louverture, the cat who overthrew the French in
Haiti.
In Haiti, man, because I'm telling you, this is really. I mean, listen, I've done 1,000 primary source interviews, and when Murata dropped your name, I was like, I got to find Charlie, and then now we've connected, which is just great. But this is history. My show is a people's history of music, so it's really important that a lot of these cats, these unsung cats that clearly are erased out of Anglo history books, are brought to the forefront. And I mean, were you raised, is that the spiritualism that you're talking about? When you talk about the music, the stuff that was carried over, that was stayed, is that the spiritualism, that warrior mentality, that the music, the point was that the drums were the things that, it was the drums that was how they kept the French from, how they overthrew the French. It was a powerful language. And I just want you to talk a little bit about how you were raised with that understanding. Clearly, it was probably just practical application, getting down and playing the music and feeling it and discovering what it was, the spirituality. But I just wanted you to talk a little bit about your understanding of your people and the history of it with these stories like the one about Toussaint Louverture.
Well, one of the elements was, like I said, that was kept alive was the spiritual element, and that in New Orleans, especially, it seems it was able to survive and flourish. And in New Orleans, and just in the European mind, it was called Voodoo, and in New Orleans, Hoodoo, based on the Yoruba Vodun religion. And there was another religious sect from the Congo area, and that was the music was the main connection with the people and the spirits. And and some of a lot of there is the drum, and there were other like tone instruments as well, but the drum was the main one that connected. At a ceremony, at a spiritual ceremony or church service, like in New Orleans, the spiritualist churches and the holiness churches, they called them. The way they dressed and the things they did in the church after going to Haiti and really witnessing a real voodoo ceremony in Haiti, I realized that that's what they were doing in those churches, and that even the possession, they called it, or the being ridden by the Loa, where the spirit came in and took over the person and spoke to the people, was in the church they called it something else, but they dressed in white with the tignons on the heads of the women. They're all in white dresses, and their movements. When I saw that thing in here, I said, well, this is exactly what they were doing in the church, like the church where Mr. Lasty was the pastor and the drummer. They would, it was the same thing, but they called it, like the connection, where it had come from. There was no history written about any of this.
I know. I mean, this is. I'm just going to read you. When I've done, I interviewed Bill Summers, the percussionist. He said that. He said they went up against the French. Terms like voodoo and hoodoo came from Haiti to New Orleans. That was one of the ways that Toussaint Louverture overthrew the French. He used psychology. He used spiritualism. He used knife, guns, rocks, stones, dirt, trees to fight the oppressor he faced. When that happened in the Caribbean, it sent a ripple through all the slaveholding in America and anywhere else. It sent fear into the hearts of those people who owned slaves. As time went on, whites became increasingly suspicious and afraid of appraisal. There was a huge revolt in New Orleans, which included not just enslaved people, but some white plantation owners joined the slave revolt to try and squelch it. I think that had a lot to do with the demise of Congo Square. It was fear. Every day the enslaved people went to Congo Square, they had a signal when they had to go back to their respective plantation. You knew what the signal was. It was a cannon. That was the signal to end your day, your pleasure, your joy. You hear a cannon, bam, time to go. Just the fact let you know how severe, just that fact alone let you know how severe the slave thing was, that you were signaled to flee and get back to where you needed to be. Riff on that. How close?
Well,
yeah, go ahead.
Well, I'll tell you one thing about that. There was my wife and I were doing some research at one point. We went into the Amistad Center at Tulane University looking into some historical stuff, and found some old newspaper articles. And in one there was an article during the slavery time saying that a law had been passed making it a crime punishable by death for a slave to be caught with a drum.
Wow.
And because of that, what had happened in Haiti, and
right.
Right. And their fear that the drum was their communications network, and that they can't that's how they would get together and be able to get enough of them together to maybe overwhelm the oppressors.
This is unbelievable. But when you say these uneducated Europeans would come to the States, who were the ones? These people, Christians in the church would say to them, "Hey, we'll give you some subhumans for your plantation," and or these that ultimately became slaves. Who were those people? Not the ones that came here, but who were the cats that were telling them that we can give you these people that are not really humans and they're not really animals, but they're somewhere in between?
Well, these were other people who came here, the ones who had education and had money.
I dig.
And again, man, she in that book she really explains it. Really makes it really understandable. How those people were kept, like they were subjected to, in a way.
That's true. That was a brainwashing thing. I mean, do you feel like I know this is moving ahead, but it's like you talk about, these classic joints, these social gathering places in Memphis and Tampa. I mean, how did eventually we at least go back to the idea of that the drum was not that the drum wasn't banned, that you wouldn't be penalized or go to jail because of the drum? What were some of the ways that the rhythms came back? Was it just your own people standing up for themselves?
No, it was after the end of slavery.
Wow.
That was, during slavery, then in some areas that was the law that, if a slave, you don't let them have no drums, because they'll get together and, overwhelm us.
With drums.
And also
with
their religion, they were afraid of the religion, the voodoo. That's that devil worship. That's that black magic shit. You can't let them do that. Don't let them do no ceremonies. So that's why in Congo Square, the Africans and the Native Americans were allowed to dance and play, but they would do their ceremonies, but they were masking them as entertainment for the white folks, because it was forbidden for them to do any of their religious ceremonies, both the Native Americans and the Africans.
And so they, they actually were entertaining the slave owners?
And no, but they were doing their ceremonies, but what the slave owners perceived it as was entertainment for them. Let's go watch them savages dance and act a fool,
Right, and then we'll blow the cannon and we'll end all that black magic.
And then it's time for them to go back to work or go back where they got to go. Yeah, let's go, because you got so much time to do it, and then it's over. And there were I know you've heard of Marie Laveau, who was the famous so-called voodoo queen of New Orleans.
I don't know that name.
And,
go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
The ceremonies that she had, she was like a free woman of color. It was Creole, and her ceremonies were attended by the rich white folks. She did voodoo ceremonies and she did things for them. She told, she was like a seer, and she could tell them things about their past and their future, and give them spiritual advice and life advice. And she was considered a queen of the Voodoo religion in New Orleans for a couple of 100 years. And the story is that, it was, her and then her daughter and then her granddaughter who later, like people didn't know it wasn't the same woman,
Right.
Yeah. But that was the one of the things about the music too. Like, I have a picture that I had posted. I think I posted on my Facebook page of a poster that I saw on a wall in New Orleans in 1954 or 55. That says, "Stop. Don't let your children listen to the Negro music. Call the radio stations and the station managers and complain and tell them, don't play that music. Said if you don't want to serve black, colored people in your place of business, don't have that music on your jukebox, or let it be played on the radio."
I really need you to post that again. I need to see that.
Okay.
I need to see that, man. I mean, please. That to me is profound, because
it said that music is undermining the morals of white youth.
Unbelievable.
So don't let your children listen to it. And I have a book here somewhere that I found years later when I was up at Goddard College called Voodooism in Music. And it was written in the 1700s in England. And the foreword in the book talked about the same thing, that how the government is bringing in these people from Africa, and with them they're bringing their music and their devil worship religion. And so if we let our kids listen to that music, expose our kids to that music, it's undermining the morals of white youth.
I mean, this is so amazing, because this is the stuff that you had to go up against as a musician, as a musician. I mean, this is right in your face. And so 2 questions. Have you ever made it back have you gone back to the motherland? Have you been to Africa before?
But Northern Africa, Morocco.
It's amazing, man. I mean, I interviewed Ahmad Jamal last year. He only went to South Africa within the last 10 years. Did you not go because of apartheid? You didn't want to go down there?
No, just never had the opportunity. My brother Cyril just went a couple of months ago.
He did?
And, and, with a band, and had a great time. We're working on all of us going back sometime next year.
What was a memorable moment from that Northern African experience for you? I mean, I know I interviewed Bobby Hutcherson, rest in peace, and him and Charles, he went back there, and there was this search for these because nothing was notated. That's what drove the Europeans crazy. They'd go there and say, what the heck, this person's playing in 17. I don't know what's going on. Nothing was written down. It was, I'm obsessed. This is what I've become obsessed with. I mean, it's just this sort of teacher to student passing down the information, developing individual sound, because you know what? We're not very far away. When everybody starts to sound like a droid, or everybody starts to sound like the same thing, that's how you get another Hitler. I mean, that's and so can you talk about a memorable moment from your trip to Morocco, and really the timelessness of that continent, that in this country you only hear about, rogue terrorists, oil, or drought, just like, could you riff on the motherland?
Well, one of the times I went there with Archie Shep, and
Get out of here.
The concert we were playing was sacred music of the world, kind of where all of the bands were playing. They were from everywhere, from different places, and they were all doing, what I guess equates to the gospel music of America. But so what the band Archie Shep was doing, the sacred music that we played was blues and jazz.
What year? We get a year on this? What year was this?
Yeah. Oh shit! How long? Chris, when the second time I went over there with Archie Shep, do you remember what year that was? But it wasn't. It's like 10 years ago, or less. Maybe about somewhere close to 10 years ago. Maybe not quite that many, but
And how was it? The audience? How was it received? I mean, to me, like, there was people have gone over there and had these, like, almost a groan. The audience, it's just such a different vibe, because the way that music is such a spiritual practice there. I mean, what was profound for you there? Because you were playing tunes that you knew like the back of your hand.
No, we weren't.
Really? So these were just like original? Like,
no, we were like, there was a woman, a singer who, there was no rehearsal. I think there was one rehearsal for the woman who was singing, but it wasn't that she was singing a tune that had a particular arrangement. It was like, it was a bluesy tune, and some of it there were words, some of it there were just sounds.
Wow.
And the instrumental stuff we played was just the rhythms. There were the drums were playing would like lead it off, and like we'd play. And some of them were actually tuned with blues changes, and Archie Shepp actually sang a couple of things, and that were blues tunes with words that we knew.
Right.
But like no arrangement that it's gonna go like this. I'm gonna sing it. You guys are gonna play. No, just we do the tune. It's gonna come out however it comes out. Then while we're doing it.
So maybe there's some recordings of that though. That was somewhat in recent times. That'd be amazing to hear.
Yeah. That maybe there. And again, that's the way. That's the way I play now. Still, when I do stuff with with a band, I'll bring chord changes. No arrangement, and sometimes if depending on who the musicians are, we may have a rehearsal. But I'm doing the gig I'm doing tonight with these guys at the Edith Wharton House. These are cats the band leader I've played with before. I don't know who else is going to be on the gig, but I'm the featured artist, so I'll just bring some chord charts of my tunes and tunes that I like, and maybe I'll tell the drummer, here, you start this one off with whatever kind of rhythm you feel right now, and we'll play it like that. Or rather than trying to tell them, here, I want it to go like this. No, I want it to go however it goes.
Exactly. Dude, this is because did you know the cat Gene Page, the arranger? Did you ever meet him?
Gene Page, no. Where is he from?
He was out in he was out in L.A. He was doing all the Barry White stuff and a lot of the studio stuff in Hollywood in the early '70s. But it just sent chills up my spine because I interviewed David T. Walker, the guitarist, last week, and that was exactly the way. He basically was Wilton Felder from the Crusaders, Ed Green, and David T. Walker were the rhythm section for Barry White, and Gene Page would come in and just give them chord charts. That's it. And maybe he'd tell Ed what the kind of way he'd want the drum to start. But I mean, that to me lends itself to complete. I mean, there's only two letters that separate music and magic. That's where the magic happens. If you
Correct.
if you saturate people with commands, demands, then it's just gonna have a sterile feeling. And I mean, it just. Listen, one final question in set one for you, my friend, because I thank you for taking the time. It's been so enlightening. You practice a lot of Tai Chi now.
Yes.
And I think it's become a very big part of your life. But I'd like you to talk. My gut when I was when I was meditating last night and thinking about the kind of questions I wanted to ask you, I said my gut told me that the seeds of Tai Chi for you started when you went to Angola, and I wanted.
Correct.
And that's just the spirit talking to me. So I would like you to tell the audience about how you kept how you developed your own inner spiritualism when you were in this jail known as Angola. And if you could talk about how it made you stronger. Part of my show is, one of the L's of my show is life, and what I mean about life is overcoming adversity. And this is a situation where you went to this prison and for several years, and I wanted you to talk about how the seeds of Tai Chi were planted at that time, and ultimately how that entire experience made you stronger.
Well, one of the things about being in Angola was while I was there, James Black shows up.
Really?
And there was a band. There was some, I was busted for 2 joints. There were lots of musicians being busted for possession of narcotics, narcotic paraphernalia and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
So that's how James Black came in possession of narcotics. James Booker was there, and he got out not too long after I got there.
Oh my gosh.
And there were cats, like the guys in the band were like really great. There was the prison was segregated then. Everything was still segregated when I went in there.
Yeah.
Not only in the prison but everywhere in the South. So there were the white musicians and there were black musicians, and the majority of the white. There were a couple of white bands, but the white bands played country western and Cajun music. And with the black bands, we had one black band that was rhythm and blues, funk band, and we had the jazz band.
This is unbelievable.
And one white trumpet player from New York who had the misfortune to get busted in Louisiana.
Yep.
was a bebop player, so he didn't want to play with the white bands.
Was it Chet Baker?
No. It was a guy named Russell Sweet.
Okay, so he didn't want to play the country western Cajun stuff. He wanted to hang
Right,
with
he wanted to play with the cats playing jazz.
the cats, yeah.
But that was against the law. So if he got caught playing with us, he'd go to the dungeon.
It was a law within the prison that you couldn't.
No, that was a law. From what I understand, in New Orleans, it was against the law for black and white musicians to play together.
This is not. I mean, whether it was in a pub or a social, anywhere.
Well, they weren't even supposed to be in the same place together.
Oh, so, but he was busted. He was busted there for drugs, or he was busted because he played.
Yeah, drugs. There was some kind of drug charge.
Okay, so then he came to jail and he was playing with the cats, and then he got busted again.
Well, he would play with the cats when we could sneak him in, and have him play, allow him to play a few tunes with us, and here come the man, you better get out of here.
I dig. Oh my gosh! So he went to the dungeon.
Yeah, if he got caught. But anyway, that part of the trip, like, okay, I got busted for the 2 joints, but at the time I was also a heroin addict, and the Tai Chi and the idea of the Tai Chi and any kind of spiritual help I could get was part of my trying to escape from the trap of the addiction.
Right.
And that was the beginning of it, where I had time away from the drug, to look at how life could be without it if I could get my freedom from it. And at the time, being in there for the couple of years, I was clean, but I hadn't gotten away from whatever the hook was that was in me, because as soon as I got out, I went back to doing it. And moved and went from there really in a couple of days to New York. And that's where I was seeking help. I went through a bunch of different programs, drug programs, and then the guy told me about, I was living in Brooklyn, there's a Tai Chi class there at the Academy of Music. So I went over there and talked with the teacher and started with the Tai Chi there. And again, it was just part of my spiritual journey in trying to get my life back. And it has helped me over the years, and I still practice, I still do the Tai Chi and the Qigong, and it's another spiritual connection, thing that's related to everything else. It's like playing the music is kind of the same kind of energy as doing the Tai Chi, or the same energy, because what it's about is being able to connect to whatever the higher energy is that feeds us all. And so, yeah, I still do it every day, and it helps keep me feeling centered and focused.
Did you? Was there that teacher? Was there like a demarcation point when you felt like the hook was finally out of you? The addictions were finally out.
Yeah, it took years though.
I dig. I mean, I think. Listen, my wife is Taiwanese, so Tai Chi is a very big part of that of that culture, and I know that, how really soothing and beautiful it can be, and but you still look at the South today, the Deep South. I mean, can we definitively say that the Civil War is basically still going on?
Yeah, but it's not only in the South though.
I know, but you chose to live. I mean, I went to Boston University. You're living in a. Of course, they did have a neo-Nazi rally in Boston, maybe a week ago. Yeah, so you're right. It's everywhere.
Yeah.
The Klan. Yeah. Listen, someone just told me Cat Vibes tabla player told me about Pete Seeger in 1952 bringing Paul Robeson up to Peekskill, and the Peekskill Klan threw all the rocks through the bus. So it's everywhere. So what is your word? I mean, you from the posters in '55 in New Orleans for people to say, keep your white kids cherished, don't let them hear this devil music, to now. Can Can you just talk about some inner strength and wisdom that how you affect change in your world, and not try to do too much that you can't control?
Well, it's through the not only the Tai Chi and the Qigong, but other forms of meditation and my connection to my realization of spirituality and that in Tai Chi, the Tai Chi symbol has the positive and negative, the yin and the yang.
Sure.
And and like I remember in Star Wars, there was the dark side of the Force, and there was the Force.
That's right.
So I just try to stay connected to the light side of the Force.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, stay connected to the light, and
always look towards the light. Always look towards the light. Right.
Yes. Yeah. And just try to stay focused and keep my energy positive. And I don't, hold any hatred or anger or bitterness and all that kind of stuff. I do talk in some of the schools now about the experiences of black musicians touring in the Jim Crow South, and people have asked me about, how can you laugh about those things? Those terrible. And shit was funny, I had a friend in the prison, Bo Ziggles, he was a comedian and a dancer, and there was one of the captains who would kill you as soon as look at you.
Right.
So when most of the prisoners saw him coming, they would get out the way. Oh shit, here he comes. Let's duck into the dormitory or go somewhere. But Bo Ziggles would run up to him and fall on his knees and slide up to him. He was a dancer, so he could do that dance move. And, good, geez, good, cool, kind, cap move, good boss. What can this old nigga do for you today, boss? And he would smile and pat Bo Ziggles on the head. Bo Ziggles didn't have to work. We were all sentenced to time at hard labor.
Right.
Bo Ziggles, we talk about, he said, man, what's so funny, though? Them motherfuckers think we mean that shit. When, if you don't do it, they're going to kill you. But when you do it, they think you really mean it. That we,
right.
We really look at them like, and that was the truth, man. It was so, some of the shit was just so ridiculous.
Yeah, you have to laugh at the insanity of it. Except it was your people. I think that's the thing that, and today we're even more multi-ethnic today too. And I don't, then you look at who's currently leading this country, and it's like, I don't know, for me in the 90s when I went through high school and college, I was just naive enough to think that we were living in a post-racial society. And that, is just the farthest thing from the truth, but I applaud the fact that, I don't know, you never really took yourself that seriously. You took the music, you knew that the music was bigger than any one person, but you never took yourself that seriously. And I think it's lend itself to longevity, inner peace, and constantly wanting to learn, because I think any musician would say they're still learning.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, Mr. Yeah.
There's one other thing I wanted to mention about the music.
Yeah.
I played with this guy Kip Hanrahan, had this great Latin band that he worked with. When he first called me for the gig, he said it's Kip Hanrahan and Jack Bruce. And I said, Jack Bruce from Cream? He said, yeah. So I thought it was some kind of rock and roll stuff.
Right.
And it was in the band, the first rehearsal I went to, there was Giovanni Hidalgo playing congas, Milton Cardona playing congas, a guy named Anton Fier playing drums, a guy named Ignacio Berroa playing, and Chocolate Armentiaros playing trumpet, and it was this great Latin band with all this really cool stuff. Andy Gonzalez was playing bass.
Well, and this, wait, what? Because the crazy thing is that when Les McCann, his first trio, when he moved from Kentucky out to L.A., was Jack Bruce on bass. It was a Stone Jazz gig. What this is so. What year? When did that go down?
I think the first gig I did with them was sometime in the in the 80s. I don't remember when the first one was. But we did some recordings over the years. You know, we did a bunch of tours in Europe and stuff.
I'd love
Yeah,
to
I
hear.
think it might have been 1980, might have been the first tour I did with them. But the last thing we did, there was a recording that was done called Rumba Profundo, or A Calm in the Fire of the Dance, Deep Rumba. And on that that recording, we did some of it at the Blue Note in Tokyo and some at a studio in New York. And in New York, we did a tour with myself and Andy Gonzalez called Andy and Charles Discuss the Science of Voodoo and the Voodoo of Science.
The call and response.
Yeah, it's and it was one of those things where it wasn't a tune. That's something that was pre-created.
Sure.
We went in the studio and we just played, and I had no idea what he was doing, and really didn't know. I'm just following him. And at first, you know, because of the way he was playing, whether the emphasis on the bass note with the strongest beat wasn't on a downbeat, it was on an upbeat. So without the drums and stuff there, I was like, oh, shit, I don't know what's happening. So Negro, who was the drummer, came into the studio and took a key and played the clave on the mic stand with the key.
Right.
So I could hear, he said, it's going to be 2-3 clave. Well, tink, 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 tink. And that's very faintly heard in the recording. So with that, I was able to follow, you know, keep in time with Andy. And so that was really a voodoo experience there.
Did you? Is that available for the public, or I would love to hear that?
Yeah. It's the title of that particular recording is Rumba Profundo, or A Calm in the Fire of the Dance. It's on Kip Hanrahan was the band leader and the producer of those things.
I don't think I'm friends with him on Facebook. I don't think I realized that was part of his lineage. That's
man, he's got so much cool shit. Like one of the gigs I did with them, we go in the rehearsal studio and there's Steve Swallow, Andy Gonzalez, and Jack Bruce playing bass.
My God! Wait, 3 basses?
Yes.
3 uprights?
So
or 3 uprights?
So Andy Gonzalez was playing the bass parts.
Right.
Steve Swallow was playing chords. Jack Bruce was playing lines.
Wait, did you just, were you an observer, or did you
No, I was on the record. I played with that band.
Now what is that? That's not the calm.
No, that was way before that. That was another. Like each time we did a tour, the band had a different name. I remember the first one was called Desire Develops an Edge. But that recording was done when I got in the band. They had just finished that recording. But that was the first band I was in, was Desire Develops an Edge. There was one of them that was called Arabian Nights. There was another one. I can't remember the names of them. But there were all kinds of great musicians. Like Leo Nocentelli was on some of those sessions with us.
Unbelievable. Charles, if you're up for it, maybe in about a month, I'd love to do set 2 with you if you're up for it.
Okay, cool.
All right, man.
All right, you're welcome, man. Thank you.
Cheers, man.
Okay.
Later on.
All right.
Bye-bye. Bye.